Greetings. Thank you so much for joining me today as we talk about building equitable organizations. Today we're talking about the work we do internally in our clinics to make sure we can do the best work for our patients and community. My name is Breanna Lathrop, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer as well as a family nurse practitioner at Good Samaritan Health Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Throughout my presentation today, I'm going to be giving a lot of personal examples from my own clinic, and for that reason, I'd like to start by giving you a brief introduction to Good Samaritan Health Center. We are a charitable care clinic in Atlanta's west side near downtown, and we're celebrating our 25th year anniversary of being open and in service this year. And we serve primarily a population who is uninsured. That includes those that are living and grew up in our community, are working often multiple jobs. We have a large immigrant population, and we have a large ministry specific to people experiencing homelessness. About 80% of our patients do not have insurance, and we do accept Medicaid, Medicare, and some private insurance as well. That makes up that other 20%. We operate under what we have called the full circle of health approach. This describes kind of the various services that our patients have access to when seeking care at Good Samaritan. We have medical care, which includes comprehensive primary care services, laboratory, specialty services, pediatrics, prenatal care, lots of chronic disease management. We also have a full dental clinic where we do everything from cleanings and extractions to crown and bridge and dentures. We have a behavioral health department that includes full-time counseling, part-time psychiatry, and a certified peer specialist. We have a robust offering of various health education classes, whether that be for the local school systems who bus students in to work with our chef in the teaching kitchen and have a flossing workshop with our dental hygienist, to one-on-one nutritional counseling, to diabetes group classes. And finally, we have a program of a variety of services that we kind of lump into this healthy living category that really focuses on what are those social determinants of health impacting the well-being of our patients. This includes our 1-acre urban farm. We have 2 full-time farmers who harvest most of the year, and then we are able to sell all of that produce to our community at cost and doubles food stamp benefits to make sure that we are addressing the food desert and issues that our patients experience in this community with accessing healthy food. We also have a partnership with the YMCA and have a small YMCA on campus that offers low-cost options for exercise. We have transportation services through our own van and an Uber partnership in which we can get patients to appointments, and we have a large case management program with partnerships with many of our housing case managers across the city who help with everything from financial assistance applications, food stamp applications, and getting people into permanent supportive housing. We do this through a commitment to scholarship, best practices, an ongoing quality assurance program, volunteerism, whether that be our internship program that helps us run day by day, or our volunteer specialists who augment our services, and through partnerships, knowing that we certainly don't have all the answers. We don't have every service our patients need to live a healthy life, and so building these partnerships across our community and city to make sure that our patients have access to what they need. So as I talk, that's a little bit about who we are, but I'm actually not going to spend today's time together talking about the how we serve patients or the what programs we implement. But what I've actually come to find is a much harder and trickier place to navigate as a leader in health and a healthcare organization is how do I create and how do we partner within ourselves to create a space in which our employees experience equity. So why does this matter? If we want the people that work in our clinics, our staff, to demonstrate equity and to do the really hard work it takes to build health equity within our patient population and community, then we have to create a work environment where staff experience it. The same, you could put in several words there for equity. The same goes for compassion. If we want our staff to show up and meet patients where they are, to care and hear their stories, to demonstrate love and caring, if they are not receiving that when they come to work, and work is a place of stress and hardship and feeling unseen, unvalued, and unsafe, then that will come across in the care that we deliver. I define health equity as everyone having a fair and just opportunity to live a healthy life. And equity, the very root of it, means that people need different opportunities and resources to thrive. And I think we all know this because we work with patients and because we see that what's needed in room 101 isn't the same solution that's going to help make someone better who's in room 102. And that same principle applies to those who work for and in our organizations, is that these are also people and families and community members who are seeking to thrive and deserve to do so. And the environment we create and the resources we provide as employers make a difference in their health outcomes as well. And I think this is really challenging, and I think the challenge presents itself for a few reasons as we think about, okay, so what do we do if we want to create an organization that's building equity internally? First is that healthcare is inherently hierarchical. There is a large gap in kind of traditional wages and education amongst people who work in any given healthcare center. Some of that hierarchy is needed for patient safety, of course, but it can also be problematic when it comes to decision making and policies to make sure that everyone is being valued and that the decisions made are promoting the health not just of those with the ability to write a prescription or in leadership positions, but from someone that was hired just a few weeks ago. We also are always dealing with competing resources. Any money I know that I allocate or spend on staff, whether it's increased wages, more continuing education, bringing in a guest speaker, that comes out of an operating budget, which is also how I'm getting Uber rides for patients and keeping the price on the sliding scale low enough that our patients can afford care, or purchasing additional equipment or stocking our medication supply for things that I can't get through free resource programs. That those resources often feel in competition with one another when trying to decide how to best use our resources. And certainly there are competing needs between staff and patients in our community. Our community needs us to see as many people as possible. I think this was really highlighted well during the pandemic. The more people we could test, the more sick people we could see and divert from the emergency room, the better for our general health outcomes in our community, but not necessarily better for staff who were getting exposed, overworked, and feeling completely stressed out and burnout. We saw this across the healthcare system. So there's also this balance between what does our community and what do our patients need to be healthy, and what does our staff need to be healthy, and what happens when those aren't the same. And while these challenges are not going away, I think that there's a really exciting opportunity for some digging deep and some trying new things and even some uncomfortable conversations, because there's also a really great opportunity here. First is that we know healthcare outcomes are determined in large part outside of the healthcare system, meaning that when we are one-on-one in an exam room with a patient or working on patient outcomes, we're often treating the downstream health effects of upstream factors. In other words, I am treating disease processes that have roots in poverty and racism and trauma and inadequate food and inadequate housing. And so we know that one of the most powerful ways we change health outcomes in our patient population is by addressing those upstream factors, those social determinants of health. One of the best ways we do that is to make sure that we are doing that for the people that come here every day, those that work in our organizations. Medical research over and over again tells us that there is a reduction in bias and errors when staff are engaged, when they feel cared for and sufficiently educated and equipped, that their ability to work on their own bias, manage their own emotions, and give better care, as well as better service, is augmented. I don't know about you, but when I see patients, I often think, what do I wish their employers were doing? I wish they were getting paid a living wage. I wish that they were offered benefits. I wish that it wasn't such a big deal to take a day off of work if they're sick. I wish they weren't so stressed out and overworked. All of these things that I see negatively impacting my patient's health, I think, let me make sure that when it comes time to make decisions for my staff, that we are modeling the kind of employment I would want my patients to have. And finally, the environments and the organizations that we build and create are also a way of living out our mission. I'm sure all of us here have different mission statements, but we all share a common theme in our missions, and that we are doing this because it is grounded in our belief system, that our belief in a God who created humanity and loves humanity and sees value in each and every person should be reflected not only in the way that we deliver care, but in the way that we show up as an organization and the way we show up for the people working in our organizations. So how do we do this? So when I think about equity internally, what we are doing for our employees and within our organization, I'm going to share a few kind of realms that we have been doing work in here at Good Samaritan. I will certainly say that we're not there yet, and we don't have all the answers, and we've made mistakes along the way, and will continue to do so. But my hope is that in sharing some of our learning and our experiments, that this can be a helpful launch for many of you also, I know, struggling with these same kind of concepts. So we'll talk a little bit about employee education. How do we create environments in where there's ongoing learning, engagement, and opportunity for advancement? How do we create a workspace in which people feel safe and there are reporting structures for when mistakes are made, because they are and they'll continue to be made? How do our policies and culture influence the experience of people at work here? And is that experience different depending on the type of job, race, ethnicity, or other factors? What does leadership look like, and how are we seeking representation within our leadership? Who gets a say and what types of decision making? How do we develop our board so that we can do this work with full support and with guidance from their leadership as well? And finally, how do we make decisions about pay and benefits from an equity-based lens? So let's spend a little time in each of these. I'm going to first talk a little bit about learning and advancement. And when I think about learning or employee education, I think about it in kind of three different groups. There's learning that all of us need to do for our own personal growth and thriving. There's learning that we need to do for our specific career trajectories, advancements, and new skill knowledge. And there's learning we need to do to just be better for the people that we serve. And our goal here at Good Samaritan is to say at all times, how are we making sure all of these learnings are being done and have a place? So learning for personal growth and thriving, we often think of this as what helps our employees thrive when they're not at Good Sam. And so we've started trying to incorporate, our goal is 2 staff meetings a year where we're picking topics that are just for the betterment of our staff. So for example, one of the banks that we happen to bank with offers financial counseling and financial management, and we had a representative come in and just field questions. And we were talking about, like, do you start saving a savings account, or do you pay off credit cards? What do you do when you have old credit cards and you want to stop them? What's safe? How do you freeze credit? Why would someone do that? And like we had questions and questions and questions, and staff were sharing personal stories, and it was just this really exciting time where people felt they had a safe place and were empowered to get some basic financial management questions answered. We did something similar around benefits, talking about what's the difference between short-term and long-term disability. How do you make decisions about what you should pay and what you shouldn't? What is life insurance? What is the difference between term and whole? So that people aren't just getting a packet, but actually thinking through these decisions in a way that they can make them not just here at Good Sam, but for future employment as well. Other topics might include things around self-care or counseling resources, anything that helps our our employees feel seen and valued and give them tools that make them successful, not just in their careers here, but in their own life and thriving. I'll touch on this a little bit later, but we also have done a lot with block scheduling to make sure that employees can have passions, learning, or pursue additional education when they're not here at the clinic. Full time for most employees at Good Sam is closer to 34 to 36 hours, really trying to keep a balance in which people have the opportunity for growth and advancement beyond just their day-to-day work at the clinic. We also want to make sure that people have the opportunity to advance in their careers here, their skills specific to the work that they do. So this might be an expanded role, for example, a dental hygienist getting trained and certified in pediatric dentistry that had started with just adult care, learning opportunities and new skills. Another recent example is we have several of our front desk or guest services team members doing billing and coding certificates right now. One of the ways that we walk this walk rather than just talking it is that we provide continuing education money for all employees. The amount varies. Obviously, those that need hours to maintain licensure may need access to more money than those that this is a benefit for them in the organization and not tied to their licensure. But every single employee here has money each year. We also just launched this year a smaller pool of money where employees can apply for a special project or learning opportunity. It's a conference they feel might really benefit us by attending, or maybe a certificate program. And this is specifically available for people that are early career tracked employees. And finally, we want to make sure that we are doing the work we need to learn for our patients. All of us that work at the clinic and in your organizations bring our own life experiences, and often they don't match our patients. They certainly could never match all of our patients. So we also strive to dedicate some of our group learning time to helping expand our worldviews and unpack our bias. Some of the work we've done at Good Sam recently is doing implicit bias training. We had a really a powerful talk from a sexual violence survivor on what she wished providers would know or say or do to make her experience better. LGBTQ plus sensitivity and trauma training have all been different topics that we've covered to help make sure we are showing up the way our patients need us to. We also do lunch and learns a couple times a year, and this is actually, we have a lot of volunteer specialists that love to teach and have specialty kind of topics and interests, and we will invite all of our other volunteers and interns as well as staff to just share an hour over lunch, kind of learning from them, and we often pick just interesting topics that people experience not just as clinicians in the clinic, but as everyday people interacting with family members. So for example, our most recent was our psychiatrist led one on marijuana use. What are the trends? What does it mean for it to be legalized? What types of products are available, and what do we know about health implications? It was just a really engaging and helpful conversation. As we talk a little more about advancement then, we're not only wanting to provide opportunities for growth and learning, but also opportunities to advance here within the organization and beyond. We try to promote from within when all possible. We offer all open positions to current staff first. We also use our guest services, which is our front office, as kind of a training ground for other positions. So we often have people that are very young, early in career, unsure of where they want to head, join our team in that department, and then move into positions such as medical assistants and dental assistants. We also run an internship program, so a lot of students that are in various gap years or try to decide next steps will come and spend time with us and be a full-time employee, and then later move on to med school or PA school or nursing school or administration, wherever they head from there. Some of the successes of this program have certainly been employee retention. We right now have about 15% of our staff that are over the 10-year mark in terms of how long that they've worked for Good Samaritan. Well over half our staff is at 5 years or more. The internship programs and this internal promotion kind of gives us a pool of future employees so that when there might be a sudden change, we have places that we can go for people that are already invested in our organization. It also promotes a lot of cross-training and cross-departmental collaboration. So if you're someone that worked in front desk and then you become a medical assistant, you are really sensitive to how those two departments need to work together and can champion that relationship. Also, we do know that people sometimes outgrow us. They advance beyond what we have an open position for. And our hope is that while that might be a temporary loss for us, that it's certainly a benefit to the future workforce. Certainly, this comes with challenges. It creates turnover for especially our entry-level positions, the front desk in particular, as people advance quickly in the organization. And we often have more employees outgrowing our opportunities as a 50-person employee organization than we do opportunities for them to fall in. And that's okay. Sometimes moving on is something we can celebrate, even if it's our loss. I do want to offer just a resource that is available in terms of education for employees, because I feel like sometimes this can feel like a lot of work and not a lot of help. But I did have the pleasure of spending about 1.5 years working with AmeriCares to develop the AmeriCares Health Equity Learning Hub. It is free, accessible at learn.americares.org. You make a free account and register for the Health Equity Learning Hub. It's asynchronous. You can use it in staff meetings or people can access it on their own. And it focuses both on knowledge building around topics related to equity as well as action steps. There's tracks for providers, leadership, and staff. It's meant to be accessible for anyone and everyone, including your board of directors, including volunteers. And it does offer 6 hours of free continuing education for licensed providers, from dental to psychiatry to social work to medical. There's kind of two sections. Part one is knowledge building. It's topics such as understanding social determinants of health, racism and healthcare, sustaining equity work and self-care, creating inclusive spaces, screening and talking to patients about social determinants of health. These are kind of 20-minute apiece walk-through, very visual auditory modules. And then part two, we actually interviewed clinics across the U.S. on what they are doing around some of these social determinant issues and present a variety of tools and models that are free to learn from and borrow. From how do we solve issues of housing, food access, transportation, childcare, even at the clinics. What are clinics doing to make this work possible? So please take advantage if that can be a support for you and your clinic. So let's move on to safety and reporting. We want to create a clinic and an organizational environment where people feel safe. And this starts with addressing often microaggressions and creating a space where we talk about what microaggressions are, when we talk about racism, what people experience, and that there's a safe place to do so. Certainly, I think all of us as organizations strive for open door policies and have reporting structures, but sometimes they're not enough. One thing we did a couple years back is we actually were able to network with someone who was a nurse that had opened her own consulting and life coaching company, and we had her available that any employee could reach out to her if they were just working through something in the workplace and wanted a sounding board and a processing space, and that was completely confidential and on our dime, and that if they wanted, she could bring their concerns to leadership if they felt like they weren't able to do that or they needed support doing that. Another strategy we've used is just constantly seeking staff feedback and doing it in a wide variety of ways. So having full-on staff conversations and workshops when making big decisions like our newest strategic plan. We spent a lot of time last year engaging all staff voices, to doing anonymous surveys for quick feedback, whether this be via email or a quick online poll at the start of the staff meeting. Everything from, how are people feeling about COVID safety, to how did recent racially charged events in Atlanta make you feel, and are we responding appropriately as an organization? Certainly, some of our successes have been having just a space that's trauma sensitive, and allows for different ways of expressing or reporting when people are faced with these kind of dilemmas. That there is a way to give anonymous feedback to leadership when walking into someone's office or reporting that just seems impossible. We'd rather learn about it through an anonymous means than have it go unchecked and unnoticed. And that, the more engaged staff feels in decision making and the more they're feeling their opinions are being counted for and included, the more engaged they are in those decisions that we're making. Some of the challenges have been certainly identifying the right professional, finding someone to do that, and how to best make that work. Certainly, even anonymous feedback is difficult with smaller staffs to really stay protected. And overall, having these resources still goes underutilized by staff. And always trying to say, is that because things are going well, or because people are just too caught up and too busy in their day-to-day to take advantage of seeking out this help, even though it's free and accessible. And that the more you ask for feedback, the more feedback you will get that you can't always address or don't always have the ability to incorporate at any given time. When we did strategic planning, there were brilliant ideas, but we don't have $50 million to implement all of them. And so also learning how to give people expectations around how feedback will be used and how to address feedback when there isn't an immediate solution or way to incorporate it. I've also done some work around our policies and procedures. We, for example, spent last year rewriting our employee handbook through an equity lens, taking people from each department and saying, how does this policy feel if you are a salaried employee? How does this policy feel if you are part-time? How does this policy feel if you are hourly? And kind of exploring different ways, for example, bereavement policies. If we are too limited on who is family, what does that do for our employees who are living in a little bit less traditional family settings where grandma or an aunt may be the closest person to them and that loss would require bereavement leave? And so all of these questions we just really took time to unpack and say, are there policies that inadvertently affect one population over another? We spent a lot of time too on dress code, hair, piercings. What is the difference between what's needed for patient safety? And then what do we just need to say that creates more bias and that's disadvantaging one group of people over another? We've also moved to a lot of team-based decision-making for even large decisions. I will talk in the next slide about kind of our new leadership model and how decisions are made, but really having people from multiple perspectives in different departments going through the regular decision making of the clinic. I think the success is we've gotten much better at a shared decision-making model, and that it provides a checks and balances, that I worry a lot less that my decisions are going to be clouded by bias that I'm not even aware is happening, or from my own perspective without including enough others, when all of these decisions are being made in a shared decision-making model. And that I feel much more confident that our policies reflect all levels of the organization and not just the people that are more likely to have administrative or salaried positions. Some of the challenges is, of course, this is time intensive. Shared decision making is not fast, and it's not easy, and it has to be practiced. That people have to get much better at being comfortable with compromise and conflict, and that can sometimes feel icky when quick decisions that say so-and-so made the decision, we're moving on, certainly might be more efficient and might be easier in the short run. One of the changes we made a couple years ago that continues to bring me just the most excitement is that we took some time to really evaluate the structure of our organization, and we significantly flattened our organizational chart. So rather than kind of having your typical pyramid organizational structure, we now have an expanded senior leadership team pictured here, which includes our CEO, our chief operating officer, our medical director, dental director, chief development officer, patient access director, and wellness director. Our CEO does spend, he's our founder and is here part-time, so most of our senior leadership meetings are actually not always with him present. But the rest of us meet twice a month for about an hour and a half to go through those major decision-making processes. And it's really just changed the conversation because we each bring our own story. 2 members of our team, for example, are native Spanish speakers. 3 of us are fluent Spanish speakers. One of our members grew up in this community. We represent different aspects of the clinic and the work, and we bring that to this decision-making space. We also established a leadership team for kind of folks that are more in what we might call middle management, where they also meet on a monthly basis to just continue to improve in collaboration between departments and problem solving. So some of the successes have been that there's just more voices in the senior leadership. It's certainly diversified who we are as an organization and a senior leadership team. The leadership really represents our full circle of health model. If we say that medical and dental and behavioral health and food access are equally important, then our leadership team should represent voices from each of those departments, and it does. That it's given some great growth opportunities, that people that were probably going to be needing to leave the organization for increased leadership opportunities, we've been able to provide that here and retain some really critical team members. And that a terminal or clinical degree is not needed for leadership. On our current team, 4 of us out of the 7 people pictured there have any sort of clinical degree. And we have 1 team member, for example, that actually doesn't have a college degree. And I think that has made us better and stronger. Some of the challenges, the larger the leadership team, the better you need to be at delineating roles and when fast decisions need to be made, who is in charge of what when shared decision making isn't possible. You have to create the time and space to do that shared decision making work together. There has to be opportunities for development for new leaders that are coming onto the team, especially when there are those that may have been in these leadership positions longer and are more established. And that there certainly needs to be clarity both for the board of directors and the staff on who to go to with what certain problems and how to make sure that there's just a clear train of accountability for the decision making that's happening. And we don't have it perfect, but we spend a lot of time reworking job descriptions and working on process flows that increase the efficiency of this model. But I really feel like we have come out stronger and made better decisions and created a better organization as a result. I want to touch briefly on board development because our boards, just like our staff and leadership team, also need to be engaged in this process if it's going to be successful. Board members need ongoing education as well. We've taken time to provide education for our board, not just about our organization, but about some of these larger topics around income and wage discrepancies and poverty in Atlanta and living wage and just the life experiences of our patients and our staff. We also strive to make sure our board has regular exposure to all the leaders and the staff at large. We do a quarterly board report that includes reporting from every department, not just senior leadership. We also invite different staff members for brief meet and greets in with the board when they're on site so that they are seeing a better picture of who we are as a whole organization. The board is obviously engaged in their own recruitment of new board members, and we do have a specific committee that's focused on diversifying the board and seeking opportunities to make sure that the changes we are doing as an organization are also being demonstrated at a board level. Although that process is a little slower and more tedious, especially as a charitable care clinic, our board's main responsibility, first and foremost, is the financial viability and sustainability of the organization. And finally, we'll end by talking about pay and benefits. One thing that we have accomplished this year at Good Samaritan is that we have officially put into our strategic plan that by the end of this 5 years, every single employee at Good Sam will be making a living wage based on Atlanta Metro data. So we'll no longer be using market rates to establish our wages and salaries, but rather making sure that there's not a single employee here that's not earning a living wage in Atlanta. And we did this with a lot of good conversation with our board and our staff. And we also recreated kind of how raises get done. If you do a 3 or 4% raise each year across the organization, the gap between those that make the most and those that make the least keeps widening. And so rather, we're using a tiered approach where when we do increases, those who are below living wage are getting larger increases and those at the top getting smaller to help meet that discrepancy and get to this goal. We've also been honest with our funders about what this will cost and why we're doing it and why it's built into some of the money that we ask for. We spend a lot of time looking at benefits. We want to make sure that our benefits are comprehensive, that we want to make sure we have access to dental and medical care for our employees and insurance, all of that, and also that they have access to point of care services, that if they're sick one day that they can get seen at the place that they work if that's their desire to do so. And finally, we spend a lot of time really trying to promote work-life balance. We do block scheduling because we are a staff of 50 and we are open 6 days a week, is that employees work a weekend on, a weekend off. So on your off weekend, you are off for the Friday, Saturday, and the Monday, to just encourage people to disconnect or to pursue other interests and come back to work ready to engage fully. We've also worked, especially on our provider team, with some flexibility. So we've used number of patient spots rather than total hours to determine work schedules. So it allows, especially, we found it's been really helpful for a lot of our working parents to be able to say, I want to see the full number of patients, but I'm going to see a little more this day so I can leave on time, or I'm going to go ahead and push through and not do like a lunch break, but then be able to leave to get my kiddos from school. And just making sure people feel able to thrive in their home lives so that that is reflected in the quality of work that we do. I know that was a quick overview, and I hope there's some ideas and it sparks some conversation in your mind. This is my email. Please reach out to me. I'd love to learn from you. I'd love to collaborate, and I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today.